album rollouts. We kind of take them for granted and overlook them, but for me and really everyone, it feels like the rollout can be the most memorable part of an album. Not that that means the album is bad, but more that the rollout of that album can tend to be a more enjoyable experience to look back on than the music itself. Which makes sense because after all, these are different things. A rollout is looking back on memories, a certain time in your life. The music itself though is always aging and your thoughts on it can always change, so you can't really make a comparison to them. Today I'm going to go back and look at some of not only the more remembered and infamous album rollouts, but I'm also going to try to break down what makes a good one. This is the Art of Album Rollouts. Let's start with the most fun one, surprise rollouts. As the name entails, these are rollouts that come out of nowhere, either with the album itself just releasing, or the album coming within a week or so of its start. Some infamous ones off the bat, you had GNX, if you're reading this it's too late, Kanye's 2018 run technically if you want to count that, and that's just rap. Looking outside of that, some of the biggest albums ever were surprise drops like Blonde, Lemonade, and In Rainbows. In Rainbows in particular, not only was that a surprise drop, it was the first major album to release digital only. In the pre-streaming era, Radiohead drops this album on their website for free and exclusive to it, something that hadn't been seen ever at that point and can't really be replicated since what was revolutionary then is now just the modern standard. But it's arguable to say that without Radiohead doing this and proving that an album can at the same time not be on CD, be free, not have any promotion, and still be successful, that the streaming model we use now would have been very different or not as quickly adopted. And then one that I was a big fan of personally was honestly Nevermind. This album got a lot of shit, rightfully so. It's underrated for sure, but Drake still definitely phoned it in. Anyways, that rollout for some reason has become very nostalgic to me, and even looking back at it from where we are now, where Drake's kind of this outsider, this album and the way that it came out was something that I don't think many other artists would do. It dropped with a day's warning, no word on what it sounded like. I remember people having to guess about it being a dance album, and it for the most part doing well. It's all very impressive. Even for Drake, who was pretty much at his peak at that point, to drop an album like that was really sketchy, which is probably why Jimmy Cooks is on it, like kind of a fail-safe track in case the entire album flopped, which shows that even for him, an artist that was already known to be versatile, was a super risky move. One that, aside from the album not being as good as it could have been, is one that I'll always respect him for. One I thought people might have forgot about was, coincidentally, Might Delete Later. What happened with this album, unfortunately, was due to J. Cole's pretty dumb decision to tie the whole thing to a beef that didn't really concern him, caused everything on the album except for what the beef was about to get completely ignored. 7 Minute Drill was only up for like a week, a whole ass year ago, and it still has about as many streams as every other song on the album, even after being taken down. But being best known for one song aside, this album did okay, all things considered. It's clear that it was never really supposed to be a huge deal. It was a shadow drop after all, but I do think it is kind of crazy how the first J. Cole album in 3 years came and went. Like, it feels like something that shouldn't have happened. But that's surprise drops. Now let's move on to the normal ones. Normal rollouts just make sense. They're direct, to the point, and best of all, planned, which you'll see go horribly wrong for other albums later. Lots of really good examples for this, but I'll start with Call Me If You Get Lost. Really any Tyler album would fit here, but Call Me is the one I'm using since it's the most straightforward, and I was also there when it happened, so it's got nostalgia too. It's summer 2021, and things are somewhat quiet in rap. That summer would go on to become legendary, but this was right before that, so not much was going on. These billboards go up with a number on them. When you call the number, you'd get all these special teasers, some of which weren't even on the album, which I think was neat. You could only hear them there. Then a couple days after that, we get Side Street, the first official teaser for the album. A couple days after that, he drops Lumberjack. Insane lead single. This shit is still gas, and even more impressive when you remember it's coming after Igor. The next day he drops the cover and release date. He drops another single, What's Your Name, on the 22nd. Hype train just keeps on chugging along. One last teaser the day after, and then bam, June 25th, we get the album. Start to finish, a rollout of 2.5 weeks. This is perfection. And then the deluxe on top of that, it came out way later, but for a deluxe, it had such a good build up. Tyler's releases all have amazing theming. It really is a shame that he's one of the only rappers that still commits to aesthetics for their albums. I wish we saw more of that. Another 2021 banger, of course, The Melodic Blue. Not only did this album involve Kendrick Lamar finally returning after just vanishing from the public eye, but it also involved Kanye's Donda rollout, which I think I'm legally obligated to talk about later. But I mention it now because it and Kendrick coming back further emphasized the rise of Baby Keem way back then. The rollout would start in 2020 with some teases and a couple of singles, but it wouldn't fully kick off until 2021, where we got Baby Keem featuring on Praise God with Travis Scott and Kanye. That song being not only one of the best on Donda, but was also just such a hype generator back then. At the same time that song was being worked on through the Donda concerts, we also started getting snippets of Family Ties. Yet again, that song and everything about this era is just such a moment. Those songs both dropped around the same time, and then a couple of weeks later, Melodic Blue comes out. Not only did it of course have the Kendrick hype behind it, but it was also just such a good album by itself. I really hope people don't fully forget Baby Keem, because he is a great solo artist, way more than just Kendrick Lamar's cousin. He made one of the best albums of that year. But yeah, even after the album, he added on to it by throwing on his singles plus Brent Faiyaz on Lost Souls a couple weeks later. Then a year later, he dropped a whole ass deluxe, which once again is insane commitment. Why did he dip after this? But yeah, 9 new songs, all pretty good, and that was that. Solid rollout, clean even. Anyways, another Drake rollout I've started to look back fondly on was Her Loss. I don't think enough people talk about the way Drake rolled this album out. It's still, to me at least, one of the most interesting ones in recent memory. Her Loss started literally right where Honestly Nevermind left off. In the video for Jamie Cooks, it ends with the release date for Her Loss, straight to the point. When the release window came around after a delay, we got Drake and 21 Savage on the cover of Vogue promoting the album, except Drake and 21 weren't actually on the cover of Vogue. They made a fake magazine issue loaded with references to the album, something that is not only super creative, but also just a cool thing to make for your audience. They actually made a batch of these magazines and handed them out. Like I said, it's a fully real fake magazine, which I feel is way more effort than most artists would go through to make a real version and not just a Photoshop on Twitter. Then the next day, all around the same time, Drake drops him and 21 on Howard Stern, Drake and 21 doing Tiny Desk, and 21 doing What's in My Bag. All of these show appearances were fake. And on the surface, it's kind of weird, especially for Drake. An artist at his level could and usually just would do these shows for real. Drake of all people should never have the thought of rolling an album out like this. But he did it, and like I said, I thought it was cool not only because it was a lot of effort that they didn't really need to put themselves through, but it was also once again neat for the album to have its own world of stuff and all these separate bits around it. Then after it drops on the 4th, you would think that the fake performances would stop too, but no. After the album's release, we would get a fake SNL performance and a fake Colors performance. Surprising amount of dedication. Usually with any album drop now, the rollout stops on release, but here, since it was a fake media tour, the media tour continues after the album drops. But finally, on to Nightmare rollouts. Alright, so starting off, the first thing I have in my notes for Nightmare rollouts and what to talk about was, quote, any Kanye album, and I think that's exactly where we're gonna start. Let's take a look at the last 10 years of Kanye albums and the convoluted rollouts they went through. Let's start off with Yeezus 2, I mean So Help Me God, I mean Swish, I mean Waves, I mean The Life of Pablo. So clearly you can tell that this album had several changes, complete genre shifts in subways, and in the end became this mix of good and bad energy. It's very weird to explain, but it is a great inside look into kind of what would cause Kanye's downward spiral. It basically is bipolar, the album, whether he has it or not, but you can see in the final product that the walls are coming down, and shortly after its release, they kinda did. Some people might disagree, but I do feel like what we got in the end was probably the best overall project. Like Yeezus 2 or So Help Me God would have been fire albums and very experimental, but Pablo has so much stuff going for it. I do think the loss of what could have been was fair. You gotta remember too, not only was Pablo a very unique album in the way it was made and its subject matter, but it was also really unique in its release. It dropped as a Tidal exclusive, not available to buy really anywhere for the longest time. The only way to listen to this album was streaming. And then of course the updates. We're used to this now, albums get mixing updates semi-regularly, but back then not only was that uncommon, but it was also done so much better. This album didn't come out unfinished. It was flawed in its original version, but it was done, and then it evolved over time and became something better, which was unheard of in 2016. Moving on to Ye, once again an album made from the ruins of another album, in this case Love Everyone. That was scrapped and Ye was made taking a lot from it, but also adding introspection and overall being more grounded than that album was. Jesus is King, I would explain, but my first video is essentially what that is and goes into more detail than I would here, so just watch that honestly. And then Donda, very turbulent, insane story. We went from Jesus is King 2 to Donda a year later, and then in the span of 3 months, Donda, but the version that actually got released. An insane album rollout. Of course, there was the listening parties, a great idea that unfortunately got ran into the ground, but it was cool to see an album get developed over time. As annoying as it was that it kept getting delayed, Kanye once again pioneered a new way to present his art, and it paid off exponentially. There was also the live stream. Somebody please find that. How the hell was it not preserved? Then we got Donda Deluxe with even more songs, and something not enough people give credit for, the part 2s were a pretty interesting thing. In terms of the listening experience, I get why hearing the same song 2 times was silly, but I think it was cool that he gave people options, especially when these songs were getting features added or removed at every show you heard them at. So being able to choose which one you liked more was pretty neat in my opinion. And then Donda 2, man, fuck this album. A rollout of greed and incompetence. This deserves a whole video, but to put it short, Donda 1's hype was insane. Don't know if anyone remembers, but the energy Kanye had behind his name at the time, for 3 months it was like we had erased 6 years off this man's public image. So of course he had to go and ruin that. Donda 2 off the jump was coming a mere 6 months after the original. In case you aren't aware by now, this shit is why there's 20 scrapped albums. And then it was just full of public L's for Ye, family drama, his relationship was nasty to say the least, and then he decided to put this album that, mind you, wasn't done on a $200 music puck. It was all messy and annoying stuff to overlook for an album that unfortunately just wasn't ready yet. And the worst part about it all is that it basically all went away by 2023. Which is annoying. This was the most inconsequential album release ever. The only reason why it's around now is because of Kanye's fans. He himself does not care about it, which for an album so public, I've never seen before. And then the Vultures albums, yawn bro. The gist is the same as Donda 2, almost comeback, psych, bad album, now everything's fucked once again, way worse somehow. And that's where we're at. The newer stuff to me doesn't even really count. Those are like demo albums at this point. I don't see anything real happening for a while. Now on to music's rollout. I've already talked about it in my Opium video, but I always try to stress it when people try to rewrite history and say the wait for this album was overblown. It was not. We were supposed to get new Cardi in 2021. It didn't happen until 2025. That is crazy. 4 years of waiting for an album can only be tolerable if that artist isn't constantly teasing an album for those 4 years, which is exactly what Cardi did. Ridiculous. And then when it dropped, it felt so much less exciting than it could have been if it dropped in 2024. Like, we got robbed hard there. It was a generational rollout with those singles, and then nothing for so long. That sucked. Luckily though, everybody else Cardi's connected to, I don't know why, but it's so straightforward. Opium misses deadlines sometimes, but for the most part, you can actually trust all those guys to drop on time. It's such a shift. And they have good promotion now, which is cool to see. Before, everyone in Opium was just around, but now Ken Carson gets a whole ass mural setup. That is so cool. Another Nightmare rollout, Don't Be Dumb. Also a video I made, check that out. Literally nothing going on. I was hoping the thing would be out by now, but nope. No single, no nothing. Hurry the hell up, Rocky. And then Utopia, just so much shit getting in the way of this poor album. The pandemic, then Astroworld happened and set it back another year, and finally the main rollout itself just felt so boring. I was sick of seeing that briefcase and zero release date. It was sickening. There was supposed to be a show at the Pyramids that got canceled last minute. That was sad. Imagine how crazy it would have looked. But in the end, the album was good, so at least we got somewhere with that 5-year wait. Okay, unfinished rollouts are ones where we know what the album is, we know it's coming, but it never drops, and unless it leaks, we never get to hear much of it. Some of my examples would be Frank Ocean in 2019. He starts dropping songs very clearly leading up to something, and then 2020 happens. Not only does the pandemic hit, but Frank loses his brother. That album is never coming out, it's over. God's Country, this was going on just before Donda, but alongside Jesus is King 2. It's weird. Basically just the middle point of these two albums sound wise, but it also had its own kind of flair of schizophrenic Yeezus energy in there. But overall, this is just Donda before Donda. Then Wang Sap, I'm gonna be honest, we don't know for sure if Wang Sap was ever real. It was denied by Tyler himself, but even that, I don't know if we can believe. But personally, I think a Rocky and Tyler collab album at the very least got off the ground. It might not have went anywhere, but they definitely would have seen the potential there and tried to work on it. One of my favorite lost rollouts is Cruel Winter. Let me set the stage for this one real quick. Cruel Summer drops in 2012. Huge moment in rap, damn near everyone was on it. Kanye had an insane roster of talent, and even though the album kinda wasn't as good as it could have been, a lot of it is solid, and as a time capsule of the post-dark fantasy era, it works really well. So fast forward to 2016, the idea of Cruel Winter was basically doing the same thing that was done with Cruel Summer, but with all the rising trap artists from that era, which was major potential. We only have one song from that era, Champions, and if the whole album would have been like that, then we lost a classic. I'm serious. Go listen to that song if you haven't. Heavily underrated. But of course, in regular Kanye fashion, it disappeared due to real life events, and since has gone completely unmentioned. And lastly, Slime Season 4. Before somebody comments and says that this is Slime Season 4, it's not. What the real Slime Season 4 was going to be was this, and this is all we have of it. Young Thug posted this on his Instagram in April of 2022, and a month later, he was in jail. And if you know how that case turned out, that means that this album, whatever it contained, legally can't get released. Very, very unfortunate timing. That is going to be it for this one. Thank you if you're still here. I meant to make this a quick little 10-minute casual video, but then I ended up over explaining and just went completely overboard. But anyway, the main things I gotta talk about. One, thank you guys for 1,000 subs. Not only did we hit 1,000 subs, we doubled the size of the channel, which is insane. I was at 600 when the last video came out. Now I'm at 1,200. That is scary to me, but thank you all so much. Uploads should get a bit more consistent here soon. I'm gonna try to fully lock in on that. I also made social media accounts. I might use them, I might not, we'll see. But if you want updates or whatever else there may be, I have Who Is Clouded on Twitter and then Who the Fuck Is Clouded on Instagram. Follow those. If you're new, subscribe, stay clouded. I'll see you guys later.